You're watching Hal Sparks Mega Worldwide, where I go through these whole clips as they're laid out. Now, I do sometimes bail out, but I like halfway through a clip because why the fuck bother? Especially when they're repetitive and joyless and stupid, and we've seen it before. Which we may have to do with this one because it's 20 fucking minutes long. That's right. TYT feel the need, apparently, to devote 20 minutes to what's really in the Manchin-Schumer government spending bill. Ooh, that doesn't sound good. The government spending bill. The government spends money? That sounds terrible. And it's probably awful, and you should be upset. This is a betrayal. I'm ready to be upset. Upset me.
Been applauding.
Okay, hold on. Why is it quiet? It's very quiet.
Senator Joe Manchin. The press has been applauding.
Have they? The press has the press?
Senator Joe Manchin, a notorious
This is fucking loud. Hold on.
obstructionist within his own Democratic Party, for allegedly reaching this groundbreaking social spending deal and climate change.
Well, allegedly groundbreaking. They did reach the deal. So I'm nitpicking, but
Deal with Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer.
Oh, what? Chuck Schumer negotiated this deal? I'm sure she'll mention that they passed the CHIPS Act before Manchin said I'm in, so that Schumer could negotiate in good faith and to get the CHIPS bill passed, so he wouldn't effectively, genuinely be lying to Mitch McConnell. Well, probably not.
Apparently behind the scenes,
Definitely behind the scenes. Did you see it? No, you didn't.
We've all thought that the Build Back Better agenda was dead. Manchin and Schumer have been hard at work negotiating, figuring out a way to pass some version of it.
Right.
And as you can imagine, when we're dealing with an individual who personally profits from the fossil fuel industry,
coal,
to the tune of literally millions of dollars a year, just 500,000 each year from coal alone, of course, you're going to get legislation.
All right, so every 2 years, $1 million.
That actually ends up giving tax subsidies and all sorts of handouts to individuals.
Yeah, it sounds like a compromise to me. It sounds like grown-ups did grown-up shit, and you have to hold your nose with some things so that you get a lot of the good stuff, and you hope the good outweighs the bad by enough to make it palatable. It probably doesn't. Probably doesn't.
To have no interest in doing anything to combat climate change.
Nothing. I mean, it lowers carbon emissions by 40% just with this budgetary outlay alone, not to mention the $2.9 billion that Biden signed off in his discretionary fund, the $200 million for public transportation and Superfund sites that was in the infrastructure bill. And then, of course, in the rescue package, the extra $300 million or $1 billion, beg your pardon. These are all in billions, $300 billion in laying out a smart grid and those kind of things and whatever. But fuck it.
In fact, they have every interest to exacerbate it as long as they're making a profit. So let's get.
Well, no, I mean, they don't ultimately, especially if the rest of the world is moving on from it in a coordinated fashion.
Get to the details.
Let's get to the details.
What is the agreement that they've reached? What is the likelihood that it'll pass in the Senate? Well, here's what we know so.
Well, it passes with reconciliation. And if Manchin is on, then more than likely Sinema's going to line up because they gave her a deal, and the CHIPS bill passing first benefits Sinema.
Far. In a joint statement, Chuck Schumer and Joe Manchin say that the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022 will make a historic down payment on deficit reduction. All right, let's just stop already. I mean, I'm sorry, there are a lot more details to get to, but it starts off with deficit reduction.
Right, because unless it addresses the deficit, Manchin wouldn't sign on. And calling it the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022 is a marketing choice to fuck Republicans going into the midterms because they voted against the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022.
Which is allegedly a priority of Republicans when Democrats are in charge, but never a priority for Republicans when Republicans are in charge.
So what? when you have the economic issues that we're in and the public perception is such that you might get drummed out of office even when you're doing the right thing, dealing with this part of it and not affecting, by the way, any social programs in the process. None. Actually adding to it. All right, well, she'll get to the fact that the reason it doesn't add to the deficit is because it proposes a 15% minimum tax on corporations, on multi-million-dollar corporations, the biggest of the big, which I thought this was something that TYT and these folks would give a fuck about, theoretically.
And I might get that wrong. I don't know. What do you think, Emma?
Well, first of all, let's just say how amusing it is that he now agrees to it when it's the Inflation Reduction Act, right? I said it on the show today, but it's like telling a kid that their broccoli is candy, right? It tastes just like candy. You can.
He didn't name the fucking bill. It's a marketing choice. It's for the public, and it's specifically addressing Republicans in this. It's making them vote against something they say they're for to get all the other stuff that's in it. This is not how they didn't convince him by naming it. Jesus Christ.
Pass legislation, Joe Manchin. It's called inflation. It's there to combat inflation, and that's the only way he got on board.
No, it isn't. He and Schumer negotiated the material inside the bill itself.
But yeah,
it wasn't the change in name that brought him on, for fuck's sake.
Of course. The whole deficit reduction angle was his way to get the child tax credit, to get all of these other provisions struck down from the Build Back Better legislation. And now
they couldn't clear him or Sinema, quite frankly. Either one of them couldn't get reelected if they made it permanent. We've dealt with this, like, watch The Wild and Wonderful Whites of West Virginia, and you'll understand why Joe Manchin is against making the child tax credit permanent, because he's afraid of where it would go. And so they doing it, and means testing it or having people have to sign up for it specifically and not just letting it go out the door. There's a bunch of other details. That's a whole other thing. But stripping it out, that's what made this actually functional. But again, it's because it doesn't have that in it, all the other stuff has to die.
It's just a shell of itself as
yeah, it's a shell. It's a shell of its stuff. She'll tell us what's in the shell.
As we expected.
Right, and to be clear, this agreement between Schumer and Manchin, as far as we know, does not include the child tax credit.
No, it does not.
Or at least making the child tax credit permanent.
No, it does not make the child tax credit permanent. There are not the votes to make the child tax credit permanent. There won't be until we have 65 senators.
Now, the rest of their statement says as follows: invest in domestic energy production and manufacturing. That's an incredibly important part of their statement. We'll dive into that in just a minute.
No doubt.
And reduce carbon emissions by roughly 40% in 8 years by 2030. The bill will,
by the way, by itself, because you have to understand the Biden administration is focused on a bunch of other things that they're doing, but this element, just this part of it, not the other stuff they're doing, just this part of it will reduce by 40%. This element of the budget. There's other things they're adding. There are other bits of the bill. There are other priorities they're doing. This, like electrifying the entire federal fleet, for example. That was in the infrastructure, or in the rescue package in the infrastructure bill, in that order, like piecemeal. That adds to it. That adds another 2% or whatever the fuck. That's the whole fucking point, is that you don't get it all at once. So the idea is that if we don't get 50, we don't get, it's either 50% or nothing is the idea, according to this crowd.
Will finally allow Medicare to negotiate for prescription drugs, not all prescription drugs, some prescription drugs. Let's be clear about that. And lower healthcare costs for millions of Americans.
Yeah, but those people, I mean, fuck those people. If we can't get all of it, those people shouldn't get anything. And by the way, laying the groundwork for even Medicare to be able to negotiate some prescription drug prices leaves the legal argument about whether they can negotiate other drugs that are more expensive or that become more ubiquitous available in the future. How the fuck? All right.
Additionally, we have reached an agreement with President Biden and Speaker Pelosi to pass comprehensive permitting reform legislation before the end of this fiscal year. And look, there's a reason why there was this mention, this reference to energy production twice in the statement that I read you. It's because the priority here is.
By the way, she's going to name, and we dealt with this earlier, because she sent me the article she's referencing about how she feels about this earlier when she was like, this is, only you would like this kind of thing. All right. Anyways, the permitted areas that are made available in this are previously available lands. The ones in Alaska, they turned them down because the exploration was too expensive. No company bid because it was too expensive. And they don't get any subsidies to do it like they used to, so why the fuck would they? There's 2 sites in the Gulf of Mexico that were previously cleared and then removed, and they're going to be put back on as a possible lease. That does not guarantee they will fucking happen. That just means they're an option.
Is to increase fossil fuel production within the United States. And the way that they sell it to the American people is to make them think that, listen, the reason why we're really feeling it at the gas pump right now is because all of these lefty Green New Deal policies, which have never passed, have led to this incredibly expensive gas at the pump. And
no. 5 million barrels of oil a day have been removed from the system because Russian sanctions, and they are not coming back anytime soon. All the oil and these new leases, there's and this is what the permitting stuff that they're going to talk about later on adds a royalty fee that they have to pay on top of it, making it increasingly less profitable over time. The royalty fee goes up the longer you have the well. So the idea is you got to get it out and get it out soon. Don't hold on to a lease and fucking sit on it for a long time. If you can't get anything out of it, move the fuck on. And you've got to cap the well, and you have to pay for the permits in this mean that they have to pay for any methane leakage. That is a wholly different thing than every other leasing program and permitting program that we've had like to this point. That's gigantic.
We just need to produce more energy because these leftists.
No, because there's less fucking fuel in the world, and that's going to starve people to death. It isn't about our gas prices going up singularly. The cost of fuel, while it gets more expensive here, it fucking disappears in the rest of the world because we are always going to have enough money to buy it, no matter where the fuck it comes from. We're going to have plenty. But if the world, the amount of oil flowing in the world does not taper slowly over time, 1 billion people are going to die in 18 months. Because there is no fucking way electric cars handle most of the tuk-tuks in Thailand or any of the fucking Jeeps in Africa.
Have destroyed our ability to produce enough energy within our borders. But the fact of the matter is
that's not, by the way, that's not the assertion in it at all.
The United States is the top energy producing country in the world. We're also the top exporter of fossil fuels in the world. And so you might be wondering, why is it that we're exporting?
Because, by the way, because we're sending a bunch of shit to Europe right now because they have been cut off from Russian stuff. That's not a normal part of the situation, and it's not also an ongoing normalcy.
Fossil fuels when
it's also driving the fucking price up everywhere. And ask like Germans about heating oil and natural gas this fall.
You know, we desperately need supply here in the.
I love you guys in the chat room, by the way. You are wonderful, and we will have a good time with this. I promise.
United States to keep prices low. Well, it's because those fossil fuels are not owned by the American people. They're owned by multinational corporations who.
We pay royalties on the ones that come out of public lands, and they have to, and the ones that don't come out of public lands have to pay a stipend in strategic reserves.
Get to do whatever the hell they want with it, including selling it abroad to the highest bidder.
Yeah, just like Canadian shale oil, for example, which is what would come through the Keystone XL pipeline, which is why I think she and I are both against it, because it ain't for Americans to buy from our dear friends Canadians. It goes over the Great Lakes, and it goes down and around the Great Lakes and over our aquifers to regular market.
So this idea of increasing energy production, which will come in the form of allowing or expanding energy production on public lands, just means that it's a huge handout to the fossil fuel industry, and there is no guarantee that those resources will benefit us in any way, shape, or form.
Well, yes, and here's several ways, shapes, and forms that it will benefit us. One is our extraction practices are cleaner and better than the extraction processes of other countries. And as our technology grows and as it continues to grow, when we share those technologies with other countries, as awful as it is, it lowers the excess methane, the excess carbon that goes into the atmosphere because of the process. It's better to get it the way we get it than the way the Chinese or the Russians get it, or even to some degree the Saudis. Also, moving it from oil that's gotten here, if you buy it on the open market, it's shared all over the market. If the market is there's a stable number, and it's not like, oh shit, we can buy cheaper from Venezuela. So like Exxon buys cheaper Venezuelan oil and then they process it up at their refineries up in the United States, for example. That's another leg of carbon in the process of taking the oil from there to here or to Mexico to get it refined before it comes here and is turned into gas. Whereas if we buy it directly from here and it's closer, it goes straight to the refineries. And that's part of the process of why you want a certain amount that covers how much we need. Secondly, it lowers the price all around the world for everyone else while we taper away from it.
I've got more details on that, but Emma, I wanted you to jump in.
Yeah, Emma, jump in and tell us how this is terrible and it's a giveaway. And basically, there's going to be an oil well in the middle of every playground.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right.
You are absolutely right.
It's very
right wing.
Also similar to what we saw with this CHIPS bill that just passed, which is notable.
Yes. The CHIPS bill. You thought it was a good thing. It's not. It's terrible.
Because that's a semiconductor industry bill that gives them billions of dollars to create jobs and manufacture semiconductors and chips here in the United States. But as Bernie...
But it also gives $81 billion to education for computer advancement in the United States in conjunction with universities and industries in the United States. All right.
Sanders said he was the lone Democrat in opposition to this bill. There's no guarantee that, not this bill, I should say, but to CHIPS, there's no guarantee that those funds will come back to the taxpayer, even though taxpayers are subsidizing this new manufacturing, these new semiconductor.
This is July 15th. Okay, here you go. Whoops. Get in here. Bernie Sanders, U.S. Senator for Vermont. Senator Bernie Sanders on Friday issued the following statement as Congress tries to hand a $53 billion blank check to profitable microchip and semiconductor companies. I know what you're thinking. How isn't that CHIPS bill $230 billion? Yes, it is. There is no debate that the microchip and semiconductor shortage is a dire threat to our nation. All right. Well, I'm glad it's a dire threat to our nation. It is costing American workers good paying jobs and raising prices for families. It is making it harder for businesses to manufacture cars, cell phones, and life-saving medical equipment. It is also putting our national security at risk. All right, well, I'm in on this chip thing. This chip thing sounds good to me. We should probably do something. The microchip industry helped cause this crisis by, over the last 20 years, shutting down 780 plants here and eliminating 150,000 good-paying jobs. The question before us now is whether 780 plants? Citation needed. We had 780 superconductor chip manufacturers over the last 20 years. We haven't even had these quality of chips for 5 fucking years. The question for us now is whether these extremely profitable companies will work with the U.S. government on a solution to rebuild the U.S. microchip industry, which is fair to the taxpayers of this country, or whether they will continue to demand a $53 billion bribe to stay here. This is the main issue involved in the debate over the chip legislation, which may be on the floor of the Senate early this week. What I cannot understand is why so many in Congress are so eager to pay this bribe. When the government adopts an industrial policy that socializes all the risk and privatizes all the profits, that is crony capitalism. The 5 biggest semiconductor companies that will likely receive the lion's share of this taxpayer handout, Intel, Texas Instruments, Micron Technology, Global Foundries, and Samsung, made $70 billion in profits last year. Does it sound like these companies really need corporate welfare? Okay, that's not the part of the industry that they make their money on. And one of the reasons why they made that amount of money is because they were building this shit in really cheap areas. And there's a huge drop off between the Intel chips, the Texas Instrument chips, the Micron Technology, the Global Foundries, and the Samsung chips. I'm opposed to this legislation in any form until these conditions are met. Companies must agree to issue warrants or equity stakes to the federal government. We're not going to have a Chinese system in the country where the government has a financial stake in the company. We don't even, oh God. They must commit to not buying back their own stock, outsourcing American jobs overseas, or repealing existing collective bargaining agreements. Okay, the repealing of existing collective bargaining agreements, I don't see that happening anytime soon. In terms of the outsourcing of American jobs overseas, the whole point is moving the factories here. The demands I'm making are not radical. They are the same conditions that are included in the CARES Act, which passed the Senate 96-0. Please let us rebuild the U.S. microchip industry, but let's do it in a way that benefits our society and not just a handful of wealthy, profitable, and powerful corporations. Okay, so his problem was $53 million in. He calls it a blank check to profitable microchip and semiconductor companies because of what they make in other areas. Okay, so hold on one second. CHIPS Act breakdown. And the FABS Act. Here it goes. This is this guy. Okay, pass the CHIPS Act. Fact sheet. Let's jump right in here. Why it's important. What did they do? The solution. CHIPS Act, creating helpful incentives to produce semiconductor chips for American Act. Congress authorized federal incentives to promote semiconductor manufacturing and increase investments in semiconductor research as part of the fiscal year 2021 NDAA. But these programs need to be funded to make them a reality. Senate passed the US ICA and House passed the Competes Act, including $52 billion in funding for the CHIPS Act. Congress must promptly enact compromise legislation with full CHIPS funding, FABS Act, facilitating American-built Semiconductors Act. The bipartisan FABS Act would establish a tax credit for investments in constructing, expanding, and upgrading semiconductor manufacturing facilities and equipment in the U.S., and the House bill includes a credit for semiconductor design. SIA strongly supports the House version of the FABS Act to provide a credit for both semiconductor manufacturing and we're not paying. This is not a city paying a sports team to build a new stadium. These things are crucial in everything we use. Shortening the supply chain is that's why there was only one person voting against it, because he could afford to make noise. And he didn't ultimately vote against it. Hold on, I don't think he did. Hold on, Sanders vote. Let's see. Passed in a 64-33 vote. Let's see. I got to see if I want to see if votes. Fierce Electronics. Innovative. Let's see. Text introduced, passed Senate. Okay. Passed House. It's gone to the president. Became a law. He signed it already. Where's the? Let's see. Sponsor votes. Hold on one second. Chips for America Act. Horsford votes. Let's see. I'm going to see if it doesn't say whether I'm trying to find the list of people who voted for it and who voted against. CHIPS Act votes against list. I missed chips too. Okay, 41. Let's see. Here you go. House approved Senate passed semiconductor science research. 200 billion. House Bill Thursday. What you need? A House Thursday approved the Senate. The measure known as the CHIPS and Science Bill now has the president. Okay, so 52.7 billion in subsidies to boost domestic semiconductor production, along with 25% tax incentive for investments in domestic chip investments, worth roughly 24 billion. It also contains 200 billion for federally backed scientific research and 11 billion for Commerce Department to establish regional technology hubs nationwide. The final vote was 64-33 with 17 Republicans, including Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, voting in support of the measure, along with nearly, here you go. Senator Bernie Sanders, Vermont, was the only non-Republican to vote against the measure.
And all of those things. But it's similar with this legislation as well. When you give giveaways to the oil and gas companies and say, hey, domestic manufacturing, they're multinational corporations. Let's be real here. They sell to the highest bidder. They don't.
Yeah, but tax incentives actually have to be on the stuff you spend here.
Keep it within the United States. The only way to ensure that would be to nationalize.
By the way, you're watching Hal Sparks Mega Worldwide. And I think that shows taste and breeding on your part.
Our oil and gas companies, which is what we should be doing as a way to phase them out and save our planet. But that is Joe Manchin's worst nightmare, because that means, hey, no more profits for me and my buddies.
First of all, he's from a coal state, not an oil state. He's not a Texas Republican. There is a difference. None of this, by the way, is about like subsidizing coal in West Virginia.
Now, I want to be clear and just say that right now, this is an agreement between Manchin and Schumer.
Yeah, it's a note. They laid out the, hold on, Manchin, Schumer deal. Let's see if we can find the, what's in it? Here's the whole thing. Wait to see. An unexpected deal on a bill that includes Okay, here we go. Total raise 313 billion. The legislation will raise revenues in part by imposing a corporate minimum tax of 15%. 288 billion it will raise for prescription drug pricing reform, which will allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. Out-of-pocket costs will be capped at $2,000. The agreement summary says 124 billion. This revenue will be raised through Internal Revenue Service tax enforcement. 14 billion. Two senators said the bill would raise these funds by closing the carried interest loophole. Let's see. Investments. 369 billion. The legislation would contribute this amount in energy and climate provisions, which Manchin-Schumer said would invest in domestic energy production, manufacturing, as we're talking about right now. 64 billion remaining investment is the investment cost of 3 years of subsidies for the Affordable Care Act premiums, an increase from the 2-year extension Manchin had already agreed to. By the way, this is not the entire budget. This is there are other parts that will be added onto it. But here you go, 14 billion, that's where the money's coming from. Because obviously it raises 739 and it invests 433. And we'll break down, I'm sure she'll break down that part of it. Hold on one second. There we go.
It has not been voted on in the Senate yet, and I'm referring to this spending bill that they've agreed on. It's a little different from the CHIPS bill, although there's now an issue with the CHIPS bill, which I'll get to in just a moment.
Uh-oh.
But let's give you some more details in regard to this agreed upon legislation by Manchin and Schumer. And I want you to remember that the initial Build Back Better social spending bill was proposed to spend about $1.5 trillion, okay? Keep that figure in mind.
Yeah, it also did not entail an equal amount of taxes and did not actually, it dealt with things that the government does not take in taxes for or pay taxes to make happen, which means it would not pass with reconciliation. The infrastructure bill could, because that is stuff the government pays for, and that is stuff that the government takes taxes to do. And they can raise taxes with reconciliation, and they can spend money specifically on programs with reconciliation. But setting standards, say a $15 minimum wage or those kind of things, that's not something the government does. That's a policy decision, and you can't do it with reconciliation. That's why.
As I read more details to you about what it was whittled down to. The bill, the new bill, will include $739 billion in new revenue through a 15% corporate minimum tax, which, and I'm adding this part for myself, will be stripped out or stripped down by Kyrsten Sinema because she has not weighed in yet. And I want to be clear that Kyrsten Sinema has been the most vociferous against any type of wealth tax hike, corporate tax hike, or tax hikes in general.
By the way, Yellen has been setting up this 15% tax minimum. Hold on. This is what this is in relation to. Let's see. This is a minimum global tax that Janet Yellen and other financial secretaries and like Treasury secretaries from other countries have been negotiating together. She's been negotiating with all these countries to do this. This is a baseline so that if we pass it, it's an agreement with other countries that we all pass it together, and it's contingent on these other countries doing it. We can rescind it a year later if they don't follow through, and then or lower it to a certain point. But the idea is that she met with Ireland, the UK, the EU members, so that all these European countries will all have a minimum 15% global corporate tax, so that if you want to benefit from the rules-based economy, then you have to pay at least this minimum amount. That's where that number comes from. Manchin didn't make it up. Sinema isn't fighting it individually. It's not something the Democrats dreamt up. It's something that Yellen has been working on with lots of other countries for the last fucking year, since the Biden administration took over.
She has been against it. She's been vocal about it, and she hasn't weighed in yet. So the idea that this is going to pass with some increase in taxes for corporations is laughable to me. And if I'm proven wrong, I will be elated to come on air and tell you that I'm proven wrong.
Okay, we'll watch for that.
Wrong, but that's my prediction. Kyrsten Sinema will be against the minimum 15% tax rate for corporations. They'll strip it out, and this will be nothing more, or the majority of this legislation will just focus on corporate handouts to the fossil fuel industry. Now, it also includes
through tax incentives for people to build solar farms and wind farms.
Prescription drug savings and added IRS enforcement. It will limit the so-called carried interest tax break. The bill will also include $369 billion in spending on energy security and climate change, and $64 billion in funding for the Affordable Care Act,
which we know is evil,
for a grand total of $433 billion in spending. So the $1.5 trillion Build Back Better agenda got,
which included the infrastructure bill,
whittled down to a potential corporate handout bill that will cost $433 billion. There will be
no, it will cost 700. It will spend 400, and the rest of it will pay for the other stuff we're doing.
More than 300 billion in deficit reduction. The one-page summary released by Schumer and Manchin said. And that
would be the 15% minimum tax.
You have Biden touting this, even though it is unrecognizable from what he had initially put out. And you also
unrecognizable. It doesn't single-handedly reach the 50% reduction by 2030 in greenhouse gases. It just gets to 40%, which if you saw someone who looked 50% like they used to, and now they look 40% like they used to, unless they spoke, how would you even know who they are?
Also have the media applauding this because it's bipartisanship, right? I mean, even though
no, it's not. No, it isn't. This isn't bipartisan. This is partisan. This is only Democrats are going to fucking put. That's why the Sinema vote matters, because we need it to cross the 51. We need. Believe me, we are going to need Kamala Harris to get this across the finish line. We do not have, not just, we don't theoretically or politically have the votes. We don't materially, humanly have the votes.
Not that it's bipartisanship, that it's an agreement between Manchin, who in my mind I really see as more of a Republican, but he's still a Democrat. And Chuck Schumer here, they're hoping that it'll just pass through reconciliation, meaning that they would need.
Yeah, not hoping. It's the only way this is gonna fucking pass.
Just a simple majority in the Senate.
Right, a simple majority. The thing we barely fucking have. It's not a simple majority, by the way. It's a pretty complex majority because it involves the vice president voting too.
Senate, the 50 Democrats to all vote in favor of it, and then you would have
No. Oh, no. How many?
Simple majority in the Senate, the 50 Democrats.
I mean, who? How many?
Meaning that they would need just a simple majority in the Senate, the 50 Democrats to all.
How many Democrats? There are, including Manchin and Sinema, 48 Democrats. Bernie Sanders and Angus King are not Democrats. They caucus with them, and if you're going to say, well, basically, Joe Manchin is basically a Republican, then why aren't they basically Republicans too? We have 48.
All vote in favor of it, and then you would have Kamala Harris be the tiebreaker.
Yes. So that would be the 49th Democrat, only possible because two independents caucus with us. If either one of them gets fucking COVID during any of these votes, we're fucked.
Vote. No Republican is going to vote for it.
Right. There's the key. That's it. That's the game. No Republicans are going to vote for it. Republicans, holy shit. They voted against the PACT Act because of this bill getting through. If it's such a massive giveaway to the fossil fuel industry and it's really worthless and the things that it does are really just, it's just a huge tax break for the, well, then why the fuck wouldn't some Republicans cross the aisle, or why would they put their careers on the line to fuck the PACT Act, the thing that protects veterans from that pays for their health care that came from them breathing shit from burn pits over the years? Why would they risk everything to stop it in that regard, or to piss on it because they announced this agreement when it's gonna pass with reconciliation only anyways?
The media has celebrated this as like a really savvy move by.
Yes, it was.
Democrats, because they managed to pass the CHIPS bill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they did.
In the Senate with Republican support.
Uh-huh.
Meaning they didn't have to go through reconciliation.
You can't go through reconciliation with the CHIPS Act, dummy. You can't. It establishes education programs. It's a policy decision. This is not just budgetary. It defines how permits are handed out and in what period. That's different than a budgetary thing that's in our regular budget, which is what this is a part of. The CHIPS Act would get kicked if it didn't clear that. That's why Bernie Sanders could vote against the fucking thing.
And they did that before this agreement between Manchin and Schumer were announced. So now you have Republicans who are very upset. They're very distraught. They feel like they've been hoodwinked by these savvy and strategic Democrats.
Uh-huh.
And now you have Republican lawmakers in the House saying that they will not vote in favor of the CHIPS bill, which really doesn't matter because Democrats control the House. But
Emma, save me from myself. I can't find myself in a situation where I actually have to compliment Chuck Schumer for his savvy politicking when I've been telling them, play hardball, twist arms, make shit happen. And then when it happens, like, capsize the whole fucking thing.
Thoughts on the strategy?
Thoughts? Yeah, Emma, say this. Tell her. The strategy sucks. Getting the CHIPS Act was, it's all for show. And quite frankly, the Republicans, tell her how it was right for the Republicans to not pass the PACT Act because they were pissed. That's all just That's all just marketing.
Democrats in the Senate deserve credit for the way they went about this. Do you think there's any hope that there could be some, good elements to this final legislation?
It's a complicated answer, I think. Mostly no, right? I don't want to give this legislation credit.
No, of course not. And why would that be? Emotionally or intellectually or just politically?
As a complete shell of what was initially proposed. David Dayen pointed this out, but it's about a year to the day from when we found out that Manchin and Schumer had the secret backroom deal in the middle of Build Back Better negotiations that Manchin was not going to go over that $1.5 trillion top line number.
Which was both infrastructure and the Build Back Better elements.
And yet,
it was not a $3 trillion bill, kids.
Schumer let those negotiations play out. It was kabuki theater. And Bernie was like, let's do 6 trillion. Then they agreed on 3.5. And then all along, Manchin said, I'm not going to go over 1.5 trillion. They get it down to his number last summer in these negotiations. And he goes, sorry, still no. So he cannot be trusted here, of course. So there is a bit of sad poetry to the fact that that was basically almost a year ago to this day.
You're not going to mention the infrastructure bill passage? That number was basically we're at the baseline number of what they included after the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill?
Day. I will give Schumer a rare bit of credit on this strategy, because if he had signaled that.
See how TYT drives positive change. TYT.com/impacts. Okay, that's fun. Hold on. How they drive positive change with their anti-voting strategies. TYT impact. Okay, .com/our impact. Let's see. This is the thing. 20. Oh. Driving positive change is a foundational aspect of the company's mission. You are helping us to drive this change. Take a look at what we have been able to accomplish together. We got her in office, even though just as Democrats kicked Cenk out. This looks like a Trump mailer. This is what they've accomplished. Here's the list of accomplishments. 20 years of driving positive change. I think she was, what was she, 9? Okay. We raised AOC in a pod. All right. Senator Sherrod Brown distances from National Prayer Breakfast. Police chief forced to retire following Indisputables coverage. April 13th, 2022, she highlighted the brave action by a hero cop who blew the whistle on policing for appointed in the Atlanta Police Department. Following the coverage, the police chief was forced to retire and the program was scrapped. Okay. TYT investigates, takes down the family. 2021. There was a whole documentary on the family that was on Netflix. Same time. Don't kill it, Bernie. The Young Turks launched a petition encouraging Senator Bernie Sanders, chair of the subcommittee, to include the $15 minimum wage in the COVID relief bill. The petition garnered over 10,000 signatures, and Senator Sanders vowed a vote on the $15 minimum wage, which would have meant the COVID relief bill wouldn't have qualified for reconciliation. Okay. And by the way, COVID relief bill, which one are we talking about? Are we talking about the American Rescue Package? Progressive leaders, you give us a platform. The TYT first to interview Representative Jamal Bowman. Okay, all right. TYT rally in Iowa in 2019. They traveled to Iowa to host a revolution rally to announce the launch of the Progressive Economic Pledge. Higher wagers? I didn't realize they've got a gambling part of it. All right. Higher wages. Maybe someone dictated it with a heavy New York accent. Medicare for all, Green New Deal, college for all, end the corruption. What if you don't want to go to college? Forget it. Get in there. Support for the Progressive Economic Pledge. Dozens of progressive elected officials, leaders, organizations signed TYT's Progressive Economic Pledge to drive for positive change. Well, dozen and a half. Progressive Economic Pledge. There it is. Ryan Grimm broke the Christina Blasey Ford story. Which part? Inequality, and moderates the Inequality in America Town Hall. Live from DC in 2018. John Goes True North. That was, I'm glad we all could. TYT launches weekly show with Dan Rather. It didn't last long, but that's lovely. Moderates Medicare for All Town Hall. Same place. Different outfit. It's good. Launch of Justice Democrats. That didn't work out too well. Hold on. That was the, hold on. Is the, yeah, here it is. Oh, that's, hold on one second. There's got it's the Justice Democrats. We are deeply disturbed by recent news regarding Cenk Uygur and David Collar. Their language and conduct is horrifying and does not reflect our values at Justice Democrats. We would be hypocrites not to act immediately and ask for their resignation. Here's our official statement. Yesterday, blog posts written by Cenk Uygur and David Collar surfaced in which they both made extremely disturbing sexist and racist statements. The entire staff and leadership of Justice Democrats was horrified by these posts. After hearing Mr. Uyghur's side of the story and talking with our candidates, our staff came to the swift and unanimous decision to demand Cenk Uygur and David Collar's immediate resignation from their positions at Justice Democrats. The words it's still on the winning page though. It's still, they launched it. I guess staying in it was not part of the okay. Young Turks on the road. Cenk Uygur protest to end legalized corruption. First to cover Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. TYT goes dark. Aren't they always dark? All right. This is okay. We continue.
There was going to be this agreement between him and Manchin, and McConnell didn't think that this was dead, which, I mean, I think he was under the impression, falsely, which is crazy that they actually duped Mitch McConnell. He would have clogged up the process. So the CHIPS bill, which has been Schumer's pet project for many years at this point.
Yes, Schumer, he's always been a big techie, and he's been after the CHIPS bill since, since he got his first speaking spell. He was amazed.
McConnell would put all the Republican opposition behind it, and they would have been forced to go through the reconciliation process, which circumvents the filibuster, and then they would not have that ability, that route to go down with this bill, and that would have effectively.
No, this bill is part of the regular budget.
Killed everything. So the entire Biden agenda, or whatever scraps there are left of it, would have.
Yes, whatever scraps. They have two. What she's making the argument is that there are two budgetary reconciliation things that they can do besides the primary budget or getting us out, raising the debt ceiling, those kind of things. And if they had to use it on the CHIPS legislation, which they didn't have to fucking do, they couldn't use it on this. And they know they're going to have to use it on this because there is no fucking way that Republicans are going to sign off on $36 billion to expand the Affordable Care Act in a bill, much less the rest of the shit that's in there.
Have been dead. So the strategy, I actually do think, was a good one. I wish they would use smart strategies for things that aren't just
that matter.
Competitive.
Yeah, this doesn't matter. Allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Okay. Reducing carbon emissions by 40% and with one single piece of legislation by 2030 doesn't matter. Okay. And continuing subsidies for the Affordable Care Act for the next 3 years doesn't matter. Fuck those people. All right, they're poor. If they need subsidies, they've just got to take one for the team.
Competitiveness with China, I think if you did a deep dive into Schumer's donors, I would imagine that there's some industry in New York that he's trying to benefit here. Like there is.
Oh yeah, well, he is a Jew in New York, so I suppose that's what we're going for. That's where you're going. There's some New York business that's going to benefit from the CHIPS program. For fuck's sake, most of these places are being built in Arizona.
Something that is behind his passion about this particular bill.
Yeah, it couldn't. He does. There's no way he gives a shit about the country at all.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah. Especially you briefly referred to the weaknesses in the CHIPS bill. But yeah, I mean, that's not a bug. I would argue that it's the feature. There's a
what? What is it? Tell us about it. Tell us about the break. I mean, this is like when we get into Greg Kelly's breakdowns. Or even the Trump speeches. Give us the details. Dig into this shit a little bit.
Reason why it's an incredibly weak bill in regard to actually benefiting ordinary Americans. But I want to
ordinary Americans who don't work on semiconductors but only use them in their everyday lives because GPS functions because of it.
To just quickly juxtapose the conversation that we're having, which is a nuanced conversation.
Is it? I didn't realize. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe I'm just not getting the nuances. Yes, this is Glenn Beck 2.0. It is nuanced. There's a lot of nuance in this.
And full of contextual information to understand how we got.
Yeah, there's a lot. I don't even understand where she even goes geographically into where the manufacturing. She even was nice enough to bring up the education aspect of the CHIPS Act. And I brought that up. I'm sorry.
Got to this place that we are today with this headline from The Atlantic.
Mm-hmm. Oh, a headline. Good. Okay. Well, at least at least we're not having a Laura Ingraham moment. We're going to have a headline moment. Here it comes.
And it's in regard to the same legislation, the same agreement that we're talking about.
Oh, God.
An astonishing new bill from Senators Joe Manchin and Chuck Schumer would put the US's climate goals back within reach. Would it?
Look, Apple News via The Atlantic. That was nice of them. That means it showed up on her fucking phone. That's a picture of your phone. That's a picture from her phone or somebody's phone. Look at oh, God. Okay, hold on. The Atlantic. Now that is in quotes. I guess this is 2 days ago. Democrats. 2 days ago, 1 day ago. This is why she hates it. This is why she hates it. You want to see why she hates it? This is The Atlantic. I think this is the same article, but it's hard to tell because that's all they're sharing is this little fucking blurb from her goddamn phone. Democrats in array. Joe Manchin's support for a new climate bill has turned the conventional wisdom about his party on its head. Well, it looks like Congress still has the capacity to surprise us. But first, here are news stories from The Atlantic. Okay, climate change. The buzz on Capitol Hill has probably made its way to you by now. Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, one of the senators who held up the Democrats' biggest agenda items over the past year, announced he's on board with a sweeping new proposal. The legislation, strategically called the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022, would reduce greenhouse gas pollution and lower healthcare costs, among other things, and will likely be up for a vote in the Senate next week. Robinson Meyer has more on what this legislation would mean for climate in particular. Well, let's check that shit out. Manchin and Schumer's astonishing climate deal. This is what the thing is. God damn it. And I don't have a subscription. If passed, that's probably why it's dark. She doesn't have the subscription. It just showed up. If passed, the energy provision of the senator's new bill would represent the most significant climate action in a generation.
Put the US's climate goals back within reach.
Yes, our goal was 50% reduction. Now it's 40%. That's within reach.
Would it? Would it?
Yes, it would.
So let's talk about that.
Okay.
Because I want to focus on that part of this, legislation.
Yes, I want to focus on this Atlantic description of it being astonishing and use that to compare it with reality. Okay.
So, Bloomberg, of all places, actually published a...
Oh, Bloomberg. Yes. Yeah, I've seen the Bloomberg thing. They hate it. Hold on one second. We'll see if she puts up the title for that. Give me 1 second. I mean, they like it, but they don't. Because they don't like the 15% minimum tax.
Pretty good piece on this. titled "Manchin Wins Big Nods to Oil in Deal Ending Logjam on Climate. Oil, gas lease sales considered linchpin."
Yes, this I've actually seen. So hold on one second. Bloomberg. Yeah. So this is the article she's talking about. Now, do you think she'll do the same thing that we see in a bunch of these things where people just show the headline like Jimmy Dore does? This is one of Jimmy Dore's big things. Maybe they'll break it down. Maybe she'll go into the article. I don't know. She's got 7 minutes left on a 20-minute clip. Anything is possible. But here's the article itself. Let's see. I want to see if she jumps into it before I do.
For Manchin support, green groups rage at measure they say undercuts climate goals, and it does undercut climate goals. So
by 10%. But it achieves 40% of the intended goal, which would be 80% of the actual successes. It's an 80-20 win.
The measures require the sale of drilling rights in the Gulf of Mexico and Alaska. The bill would also make new renewable power projects on federal land and water contingent on future sales. Joe Biden campaigned on a pledge, by the way, to block new oil and gas drilling on public land.
Okay, here we go. So this is, there's a ... in there, which is kind of important. The breakthrough spending deal reached by Senators Joe Manchin and Chuck Schumer would commit a historic $370 billion to combat climate change through clean energy tax credits, a green bank, and incentives to plug methane leaks. But it comes at a cost some green activists are finding impossible to accept: more oil and gas lease sales on public lands and waters. The measures outlined late Wednesday in the 725-page spending bill require the sale of drilling rights in the Gulf of Mexico and Alaska. Put a pin in that for a second. The bill would also make new renewable power projects on federal land and water contingent on future sales. The legislation illustrates the challenges Democrats have in winning over coal-loving Manchin, a key moderate whose vote is needed in the evenly split Senate. Now remember, if we had 2 more Democrats, we could pass something in reconciliation without Manchin and Sinema. Without either one of them. Just 2 more. Just saying. Okay. But remember, TYT wants you to blow off voting because the Democrats are bastards. They want you to always have to go through the bottleneck of Joe Manchin to get any shit done. A key moderator is like, okay, while meeting the rest of his party's demands to make climate change a major and urgent priority, Manchin's steadfast support for his home state fossil fuel industry has enraged environmentalists and could lead to yet another setback for the climate change agenda of President Joe Biden, who campaigned on a pledge to block new oil and gas drilling on public lands. Now, again, keep in mind public lands. This is a climate suicide pact, said Brett Hartle, a director with the Center for Biological Diversity, an Arizona-based environmental group. The amount of leasing this bill mandates is absolutely massive. I don't think the climate offsets are enough to cover all the drilling that is going to happen. To be sure, the breakthrough deal includes what would amount to a record level of spending on climate change, including a slew of new and extended tax credits for solar, wind, nuclear power, energy storage, and clean energy that has been hard fought by the renewable energy industry. It extends tax credits for electric vehicles and other clean cars, including for the first time used models. I talked about this morning. Analysts at the Rhodium Group said an initial analysis shows the measure could plausibly put the U.S. on track, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 40% in 2030. The concern is if we don't get this across the finish line, there will be no way we can meet the president's climate goals, said Leah Stokes, University of California, Santa Barbara professor who helped craft the legislation. Yes, California, not West Virginia. Under the legislation, the Interior Department would only be able to issue new wind and solar rights over the next decade if it recently held oil and gas lease sales. The requirements would constrain the administration's ability to pair fossil fuel developments on federal land, despite pleas from climate activists to halt drilling and rapidly pivot to green energy. The new oil, I'm guessing, leasing requirement. It says easing, but leasing, I think, is what they mean. requirements come in addition to other fossil fuel benefits that are loathed by environmentalists and could draw opposition from progressive Democrats in the House. Won't matter. We've got enough votes anyways. Many of whom sought a more expansive climate plan. The squad has already signed off on this, by the way. Democrats can only afford to lose 4 votes if every Republican in the chamber votes against the measure, which they will. The deal announced Wednesday includes subsidies of as much as $85 per metric ton for carbon capture. An amount seen potentially extending the life of coal plants with billions of dollars in tax credits. Okay, this is the part that a lot of people where they like if these carbon capture facilities. Let's see. Where's the guy in there? Carbon capture, panacea for the industry, cost of proof. Wolf carbon charts. I mean, where's the? Here you go. Don't allow. Go away. I want to find the picture of this dude these guys. I showed this once before. Yeah, here you go. This is another one of them. This is happening all over the place. But tech giants back Australia's first solar-powered carbon capture project. So they've got this system wherein they will set up these. Yeah, they'll set up these systems that you can put everywhere, and they basically filter the earth. They're basically like a giant carbon HEPA, right? And they're more efficient than trees, and you can put them in and around facilities, and then you can put them on, coal plants or gas plants to capture the carbon on its way out before you do that. And environmentalists are afraid that if you do this, then it will keep people using these technologies longer. The reality is you can't phase them out fast enough without killing a bunch of fucking people. So this is one of the only ways you can do it. And that's why everybody who does this carbon capture stuff puts along with it subsidies or support for solar or wind projects to wean us off of it at the same time. But everybody thinks it's going to keep us on coal and shit longer. The increase from the current level of $50 was backed by a coalition of groups that included Utility DEE and coal mining giant Peabody Energy Corp. This is the price of the carbon capture credits for this, because and it's getting more efficient and they're doing more of it. So it's way more efficient than it was when the initial carbon capture tax credit was put in. The legislation also subsidizes the production and use of hydrogen, a fuel backed by Manchin, through a production tax credit and other means. This is also another big transition. And hydrogen is a big part of this because hydrogen hydrogen fuel cells are a much more efficient and environmentally friendly way of powering cars ultimately than electric batteries are. Now, new solid state batteries that don't use lithium and other stuff will eventually be cleaner than that as well. So you'll basically see an even split. And one will be like long-term cars drive, the car you drive for long trips, hydrogen, you could drive all the way across the country on one tank. And then electric cars have whatever limitations that they have. You do those for short, commuter and city to city travel. In the short term, the Interior Department would be required to hold previously planned lease sales in the Gulf of Mexico and Alaska's Cook Inlet. The Interior Department had said in May it was scrapping all 3 auctions. Wait for it. This is the fun part. Was scrapping all 3 auctions, citing a lack of industry interest for the sale of tracts in Alaska's Cook Inlet and conflicting court rulings for the decision to nix 2 Gulf auctions. These are the same ones. These were already cleared. They were going to happen again. And they're back and forth on whether or not the quality standards can be set by the federal government and that lawsuit. We've seen that go back and forth. But the lack of interest part in the Cook Inlet, just if you have those again, they just have like, oh, we'll have a one-day thing. They're not interested. You're not going to get any better price on them. They're not more useful now than when people passed on them before when they were actually fucking cheaper. Once they happen, you're good for 3 years. To put wind farms out there, solar farms in the area, you're cleared. And by the way, both of these are not on public, quote, lands. They're sea-based. The legislation also would effectively reinstate it. And it's not because they want you to think it's in Yosemite. The legislation would also effectively reinstate an auction of Gulf leases that was held in November 2021, but later invalidated by a federal judge after finding the government didn't sufficiently examine the climate consequences of the move. Single hold judge, and then they're addressing it. They still have to do the climate measures on it. They're still going to be responsible for it. Anyways, okay. Under the bill, the Interior Department would only be able to issue new onshore wind and solar rights of way on federal land if the agency had held an onshore oil and gas lease sale in the prior 4 months. For offshore wind, the requirement would be for an auction of offshore gas leases spanning at least 60 million acres in the year beforehand, which they already do. The measure lays out requirements for the timing and scope of these auctions, and it mandates that all accepted bids must result in the issuance of oil and gas leases. If a sale is sparsely attended or no successful bids are lodged for oil and gas leases, the requirement would be met. If the Biden administration offers oil and gas leases on land that they know full well does not have any oil underneath it, or has previously been up and the oil companies have rejected it because they know it would be too expensive to get it out of it, it would satisfy the leasing requirements in the bill. Anyways, let's continue on. See, they'll touch on this. Joe Biden campaigned on a pledge to block new oil and gas drilling on public lands. Again, not land, water, also not new.
And again, we're already the top oil and gas producing country in the world, and we export much of these resources across the globe.
No, we nudge out Qatar in oil and in gas exports simply because Russia has shut things off. We are matching those export levels because Russia is out of the picture. But the problem is that's a gap. That's not a new market. That's not like we're adding 5 million barrels a day to drive the price down. That's not how it works.
One person who works over at the Center for Biological Diversity, Brett Hartle, says this is a climate suicide pact. The amount of leasing this bill mandates is absolutely massive. I don't think the climate offsets are enough to cover all the drilling that is going to happen. And I want.
Okay, that is a matter of opinion. That's totally cool. And by the way, more than likely, Brett and I are on the same page environmentally. The question is timeline. Brett Hartle. Let's okay. Whoops, Hartle. Hold on, gotta back up. By the way, long show tonight, but I'm getting into this. This is fun. Okay, meet the staff. Where's Brett? Where are you, Brett? There's a lot of people. Where are you, Brett? Jesus Christ! Is everybody? Oh, there. Galvin. How many people are in this place? Brett, where is he? Brett, there he is. Governmental Affairs Director. Okay, here he is. So this is the biologicaldiversity.org, which, by the way, any complaints or arguments I would have with this dude clearly would be tactical and not point, because God bless these people and the good work that they do. That said, Hartle works with the government, and his job is to push for harder shit. Look at the staff of this place. I mean, there's a big organization. Good for them. So there we go. The Brett, where is he? There he is. This is Brett Hartle. This is Brett's Twitter. We'll go to Brett's Twitter. There he is. Government Affairs Director at the Center for Biodiversity, Chief Political Strategist, CBD Action Fund, birdwatcher, wildlife photographer, aspiring future wombat farmer. Good for you. He's watching this. Carrot. Attention POTUS. The deal is a total catastrophe. Its mandate for new leases on oil drilling in the Gulf of Mexico and Alaska's Cook Inlet will lead to more climate pollution, and we're still in a climate emergency. It doesn't mandate new leases. It mandates the sale, and the ones in the Alaskan Cook Inlet have already been turned down. Also, the ones in the Gulf of Mexico were already cleared and only put on pause. Surprise deal would be most ambitious climate action undertaken. And he's citing this particular page on it. This climate, they're citing basically what he's saying here. It's self-defeating to handcuff renewable energy development to massive new oil and gas extraction. POTUS, we need climate energy emergency powers to protect people and the planet. He doesn't have any. Our vote is saying this bill is a bailing water. President Biden should maintain his commitment to declare a climate emergency, stop the expansion of fossil fuels, and secure a livable future. The declaration of a climate emergency would not solve this problem and would lead to losses in the House and Senate. And and as a governmental representative, Brett should know this, would hand the House, Senate, and eventually the White House over to the Republicans who don't want to do any of this shit.
I want to be clear about what this means. So they are going to increase drilling leases on public lands. Those are lands that belong to us, the American people. And while those public lands will now be used by the fossil fuel industry to
no, they won't.
Maximize their profits with absolutely no guarantees that it'll actually help lower.
No, with no guarantees they'll actually use them.
Energy costs for ordinary Americans.
No, if it lowers the price overall by the output, then it does impact the prices for ordinary Americans, probably the most.
The consequences of this increased drilling will be socialized.
But will be socialized. Oh, you mean like cleanup and the environmental cleanup part of it? No, they won't, because that's what the carbon capture part is about. Also, for the record, these are land drills. These are land.
The acceleration of climate change is something that we'll all pay for.
That's right. That's why we're trying to cut it by 40%. There's more to do. And if we had more Democrats in office, we could fucking well do it. But we don't.
While the profits that these companies will reap from these public lands will be privatized.
No, because actually in this bill, there is a royalty. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can find where I have so many pages fucking open in this thing. Let's see. Where is it? Here we go. Whoops. That's the chips bill. Son of a bitch. Where is it? Okay. SI chips. You kind of check connects chips to companies. Doop-a-da-doo. Okay. Manchin's latest shocker 7 and another okay, but the energy climate spending, blah, blah, blah. Where are we again? Following Manchin, party lines, no pressure, easiest way to do it. So, environment right now, it would be a bipartisan bill. I really believe that. The only vehicle to work right now. We don't know what the future will bring, but all indications might be a little bit of a shakeup and change the dynamics of getting something done. Yes. If basically saying because of folks like Anna, we're going to lose the House or the Senate and we won't be able to do any fucking thing. So we got to get this through. Last best opportunity to get something done with the uncertainty over the midterms, by the way, which are shifting, and I'm still very positive on it. By the way, Jayapal calls potential tax, energy tax and health bill what? Really important victory. Here's a Mazda.
Welcome to that magic realm between what you know.
What do I know?
And what you wonder.
I wonder.
I think that this is a very, very major step forward. If we can get it done, and I believe we can. I believe that there's a real deal here. You know, look, it's difficult because it's been a year of negotiations, 1 step forward, 4 steps back, but I think we are now very, very close. And every single one of the things that's in this bill is actually a major accomplishment, will help Americans bring costs down, will ensure that we're protecting the planet for our next generation, and will make sure that people's health care is covered instead of being cut off in the next, 30 days, essentially, when those subsidies expire from the American Rescue Plan. So this is a massive step forward, and I'm excited to see the next pieces of it, including the full text and the process going forward.
Mm-hmm. Anna, why do you hate Camilla Jayapal? Why? Why you gotta hate on Camilla Jayapal trying to actually do stuff?
That is how this system works. So anyone celebrating this as like a massive breakthrough for climate change is just lying to you.
No, it is a massive breakthrough, especially compared to what will happen when these assholes hand the House or the Senate or both to Republicans by shit-talking Democrats and just suppressing the vote, essentially, every fucking election from now until they go off the air.
It's so silly. It's just juvenile, really. And
Yes, this show is juvenile. I'm being juvenile. It's what I do. But what is your excuse?
Some of the stuff in there is like carbon capture is included in the legislation.
Ugh, terrible.
And that is such a pet project of capitalists.
I'm sorry, what? It's a pet project of capitalists. Oh, is it Netherlands? I gotta find the. Hold on. It's these socialist countries in the in Northern Europe that are really the villain. That's nearly half of all Dutch 2020 green subsidies go to Rotterdam carbon capture project. Yes, it's a big capitally thing. By the way, TYT is a corporation and they are capitalists. They run on this. Everything they do marketing wise is to maximize their market value and their eye impact, just like a fucking can of soup.
That want to continue drilling in
what'd I tell you? Remember this?
In perpetuity. So hey, we'll do
No. I mean, while you're going to have to do it, you're going to have to solve the problem.
Whatever we want, we'll admit as whatever we can, and we'll just.
Yes, they are corporate Dems. This is a great. Well, I wouldn't even call them Democrats. I would call them corporate socialists. Is that what we're going to call it? I don't even know.
Capture it back. The technology is not as close as they claim, and yet they.
Yeah, neither are solar panels. That's why you keep fucking working on it. That's why you subsidize it. That's why you give tax credits, and that's why you actually use taxpayer dollars to pay for education and for technological development.
Still rely on this because it is a false solution to not
It's not a solution. It's a mitigatory step.
Actually stopping drilling, stopping fossil fuel usage. And of course, this bill relies on that. The climate provisions in here are a joke, and they claim.
Yeah. What? Why? Camilla Jayapal, why are you joking?
Claim that it'll get us down to 40% reduction by 2030, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that plausibly. The article you cited earlier said plausibly, meaning it's very reasonable to assume that's exactly what it will do.
And I think anybody serious who is looking at this legislation, it makes it clear that is not a viable.
No, if you read it, apparently people who've read it, at least more than both of us have, the word plausible is what they use.
Outlook about what this is going to do, particularly because it's just about private sector incentives and tax credits. I know it's not a realistic solution to say we need to nationalize the oil industry within.
Right. So why fucking bring it up?
In our current political climate.
But I would like to compare that artificial unicorn fantasy rainbow sprinkles fart. I want to compare that to reality and go, this is why reality sucks. And why don't we just go by like, why doesn't cake give you abs while you're at it?
But this is the kind of emergency that we're facing. These companies are ravaging our planet, and without serious seizure of their assets and dismantling of companies that are making this planet uninhabitable for us, uninhabitable, I should say, then we're not really having a conversation about.
All right. Yeah. So basically, this piece of legislation is shit because it does not involve the government seizure of companies entirely, the nationalization of the oil and gas industry and the seizure of these companies. So again, even Build Back Better doesn't qualify under that. The $6 trillion version of the programs that they said Bernie Sanders came up with does not involve that. That would fall short.
About what we need to do about seriously tackling climate change, and this is not serious in the least because Joe Manchin's at the head of it.
will also, by the way, while we might be able to transition away from oil, gas, and coal and move to nuclear and renewables and the like to meet our energy needs, and we might not need the carbon capture because we are moving away from that. The rest of the world, especially developing world, uses a shit ton of coal. And if we can develop carbon capture technology that helps with that, we can. They're not going to transition anytime soon. Like I said, we're not talking about electric cars in fucking Chad or the Congo or India or any of that shit on any measurable level that would affect the environment currently on the impact that they're making. But carbon capture sure as fuck would. And if America was at the forefront of that and could speed that along, because it certainly isn't a fucking priority in China right now, or in Russia, or in Saudi Arabia, or in Qatar, or in North Africa. If we could come up with that technology and make it, portable, efficient, and build on its availability to places, then we should.
Yeah, and that's the final thing that I'll touch on, because I think it's an important point to make.
20 minutes we've talked about this. Think about how many of the details of this actual bill came from me talking about it, and how many, like them quoting pieces of an article from fucking Bloomberg. Ladies and gentlemen, may I just for a moment, before we get to Anna's final lack of point, may I just point out the fact that Anna is citing Bloomberg I want you to think about how they spoke about Bloomberg himself when he was running for office. This is Bloomberg. When you go to Bloomberg, this is what you see. Right across the top, and by the way, I guarantee that Cenk checks Bloomberg first thing in the morning. He's not going to Fox Business. He might not go to the CNBC website, but he sure as shit has this in his, like there's alerts. That motherfucker has investments. Trust me. Shock July stock rally was a monster the Fed may regret seeing. Wall Street stock tipsters risk $1 million pay for paltry gains. Carson Block SEC payout mystery deepens with suit outing him. House passes assault weapons ban, faces little chance in Senate. Isn't that adorable? It'd be lovely if we, because this is by the way, this is a policy thing. You can't do this with reconciliation. If we had more Democrats, all the Democrats report, every fucking last one of them. But Anna wants you to know, don't trust Democrats, especially if they negotiated with Manchin to get a deal. There you go. This is why she got it. This is Exxon CEO loves what Manchin did for big oil with the $370 billion deal, right? Exxon Mobil Corp CEO Darren Woods called the spending bill agreed to by Senate Majority Leader Charles Schumer and West Virginia Senator a step in the right direction. We're pleased with broader recognition that a more comprehensive set of solutions is needed to go through energy transition, Woods said on a conference call with analysts Friday after Exxon reported earnings. The CEO said he was happy that oil and gas feature prominently in the bill and that it's not exclusively focused on solar and wind. He added that he hasn't yet gone through the details. In prepared remarks accompanying Friday's earning release, Woods said the U.S. needs clear and consistent policy that promotes the country's resource development. This policy could include regular and predictable lease sales, as well as streamlined regulatory approvals and support for infrastructure such as pipelines. The Manchin-Schumer climate deal and energy pact did include several things likely on Exxon's wish list, including locking in lease sales and even pairing renewable rights to oil and gas lease sales. For more on Exxon, Chevron, that's that part of it. And by the way, look at the title of this. Exxon CEO loves what Manchin did for big oil. He hasn't looked at the details yet, and he's glad it was a comprehensive set of solutions. He sounds like a fucking CEO. But okay, so understand that they're going to Bloomberg for this, where every morning you just go to find out what happened with the stock market.
When it comes to assessing whether or not proposed legislation or the outcome of these negotiations really will yield the kind of policy that Americans have been demanding.
Have they been demanding them? Because those demands have led to us having 48 Democrats, 2 independents. The Republicans have half the Senate, and we have a 10-vote margin in the House. things they would like, things they want prioritized, things they think are important, demand not so fucking much.
It's not about whether or not these lawmakers are good guys or bad guys.
Well, yeah, it is apparently, because you think they're all bad guys. We've all watched this together.
It's not about whether or not they want to do the right thing in their hearts.
No, of course not. What hearts?
Okay, it's all about whether the system that our government is functioning under incentivizes.
You mean democracy?
Is good legislation or bad legislation? And currently, the system.
Or voters prioritize good legislation or bad legislation, because if they shrug shit off, then that's what they get. And if they treat the elections with the seriousness of the challenges that we face and vote every fucking time like serious human beings, and don't shit talk people on their own side in the same way that they would shit talk people that are directly against them, and literally look at, like, as rough as my feelings are about Manchin, he ain't Mitch McConnell, which was proved this week. And by the way, included in all the other things he voted for. He voted for the CHIPS Act. Mitch McConnell and Bernie Sanders voted together against it.
That our elected lawmakers, our so-called public servants, can be personally and financially invested in industries.
Well, that's interesting. Hold on one second. Because I know that both parties are the same. We agree on that. Because one of the parties presented this. The other party did not and will never vote for it.
That they then benefit from financially, right? So when you have Joe Manchin making $500,000 a year from the coal industry,
which is not benefited in this package at all. These are not new coal leases. There is no coal in the Gulf of Mexico. There is no coal in the inlets around Alaska
alone. And I'm not talking about campaign donations. I'm talking about the money that he makes through his personal investment in the coal industry. Do you really think that conflict of interest is not going to play a role in the policy decisions he makes?
Well, if he made $500,000 a year from oil investments and they were direct, perhaps. But again, these are oil and gas leases, not coal.
So if you really want policy that speaks to the demands,
elect more Democrats so we don't have to give a shit what Joe Manchin says, and we don't have to funnel all of what we want through a West Virginia Democrat, and can more focus on the broader wants of the Democratic electorate across the fucking country. Is that it? No, it's not.
Of the American people.
It's not, is it? She's not going to say that.
You have to change the system.
Oh, yeah, okay. All right. So, yeah, well, but we're what, 3 months to November? We can change the system in that amount of time, right? Why? You can't vote for it. This is what the part of it. This is like the unicorn farts that Emma was suggesting. Dude, you have to overwhelm this system. You want to get rid of the filibuster? You know how you do it? With 62 fucking Democratic senators. That's how you do it. Because then you can lose 2 and still beat a filibuster. And the Republicans will know you fucking mean business. Absolutely, Lizzie Dog, let's do it. But this idea of like pulling your foot off the gas because I'm disappointed because of a West Virginia Democrat that's only materially has any power in this situation because when we did have the Senate, we lost the House and we didn't have the presidency. And then we have them for a window. The only time we have the fucking window lasted in like a year and a half. And because of special elections, we even lost that control, 2008.
You have to do away with incentivizing the bad behavior that we've seen from Manchin.
How? How? When you need his fucking vote because you only have 48 Democrats and 2 independents? Where's the incentive? These assholes helped create the bottleneck that they're bitching about. The only reason any of us give a fuck about Joe Manchin is because we only have 48 Democrats. We can't afford to lose we can't afford to lose one from a heart attack or COVID. If one of them goes into a persistent vegetative fucking state, everything grinds to a halt.
And to be quite honest with you, I think when you reform a system like that, you probably wouldn't even attract the kind of self-interested
so Cenk's not running?
egomaniacs that we have in Congress today.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you mean like Ron Wyden? Like Schiff? The self-interested egomaniacs? Again, look, as someone with a profoundly solid ego myself, the level of projection here is stunning.
Because if you can't get rich off your position of power, why would you do it?
Right. If you can't get rich off of shitting on our entire electorate and making sure that Republicans have more control over the electorate than they deserve to have with this farcical facade of leftyism that's meant to drive down the Democratic voter base, why would you? I mean, you can't make money off this show. Why the fuck do it?
I mean, I would argue that a lot of those lawmakers would make that argument, maybe not publicly, but certainly privately. So we want a system that's going to attract people who actually have an interest in being public servants.
Yeah, like Camilla Jayapal, who you spent the last 20 minutes decrying as, I guess, a liar and a fraud because she agrees that this is helpful.
But that's not what we have right now. And that's...
Does TYT rail against whoever's in power, but mainly sabotage Dems? No, they... the idea is that the facade is we hate Republicans and they're the bad guys, but the meat of the show is all an attack on Democrats. TYT actually stepped up for public service, Al? No, he didn't. You mean when Cenk ran for office? He spent $1 million, got 5,000 votes, and who did he attack during the entire campaign? The woman running to be the Democratic nominee for that seat, who would have won, but he spent all of his time attacking her instead of the Republicans who were running, and now there's a Republican in that seat.
That's why I think anyone who's been paying attention can expect
you guys to continue to shit on Democrats all the way up to Election Day while pretending to, like, I don't know, you guys did videos about they got rid of the Choco Taco, you know, they're handling the important things. Hold on, let's see what they'll do the kind of run of the mill.
Every day the Young Turks
every day the Young Turks bloody do. Okay, here we go. Let's see what the videos are like. Alito scoffs at critics after dismantling Roe v. Wade. But again, we need votes to fix that. But fuck it. Matt Walsh is one of the most pathetic daily wires. They'll attack the run-of-the-mill Republicans. And then TikTok is a never-ending source of entertainment. Violent monkeys terrorize city in Japan. These are all the videos that they put out when something good happens. That when the CHIPS Act gets passed. Centrists prove their own stupidity. And by the way, centrists, the idea that Yang and these guys are centrists is garbage, but whatever. I mean, run-of-the-mill stuff. It's stuff you'll see anywhere on anybody that pushes back. We deny expanding healthcare to veterans, but Democrats are no better. AOC roasts gun manufacturers. Great stuff. Okay, cool. What's really in the mansion? Yeah, so this is what we're looking at right here. And then the Choco Tacos discontinued. They have time for fun shit. The Union rep annihilates corporate media shills that what? Don't understand inflation? Okay. Which is, I'd love to hear the explanation for that. Dave Rubin saying they need a mother and a father, even though he's a gay man. Right. Let's see. Trump reacts to Merrick Garland promising January 6th consequences. Okay, great. It's interesting how they write it out. Is it just me? I mean, Glenn Greenwald's is a buddy of theirs, so I can understand why they're upset. Yeah, there's the I don't know that this was a hot mic for this was just like behind the scenes video of Lawrence where he was pissed off because there was hammering. It reminds me of Scrooged. Stop the goddamn hammering. Oh, yeah, this is the other. Democrats endorse blackface wearing candidate against a black progressive. Because they're boosting these like hyper right wing people to try because they want her elected. And they're afraid that 1-to-1, if a normal Republican runs in that district, she'll never have a shot. So they're gambling on this. This is a choice. They're trying to boost these MAGA assholes who are generally unelectable so that the progressive has a chance. That's why they're doing it. They're trying to get her elected. But look at the title of this fucking article or this video. Democrats endorse blackface wearing candidate against a black progressive. Wow.
That this legislation is going to be a disappointment.
Yeah, I mean, last thing I'll say is Joe Manchin, with all of that context that you just provided, he chairs the Energy Committee in the Senate.
Yep.
He chairs it. He got it as a, hey, if we give this to you.
Yeah. Why does he have that power? Is it because he gets $500,000 a year from the coal industry? Is this 1935 America? He has that power for the same reason that Kentucky gets more resources from the federal government than it deserves because of Mitch McConnell.
Will you not obstruct the Biden agenda? Will you be a good soldier for the Democrats? And look what it got them. No.
No, that wasn't he's been there longer than Biden was in office.
You got to play hardball politics, twist his arm.
Then Biden was president.
Do more.
Do more. Yeah, just do more. Hashtag do more.
Because there's a lot of skeletons in his closet when it comes to corruption. And Merrick Garland could get busy investigating some of those things if Biden was actually serious about what he's supposedly.
Yeah, that's a great idea. We have 48 Democrats. Joe Manchin just signed on to a climate deal that will get us 40%, get us 80% of the president's climate goals by 2030. Let's get him arrested so that the West Virginians can run on corrupt Democrats used to run this place. So we get a Republican in there. This is the same. Yes, like last week, Cenk suggested that the Democrats should kick Manchin and Sinema, this is before this deal was announced, should kick Manchin and Sinema out of the party. Just kick them out of the party. Which would do what immediately? What would it do? That's right. It would, in theory, it would just, I guess, leave them out of the caucus temporarily and not have them be able to have money to run again, in theory. But it would make it 52-48 against the Democrats. And if you what do you do? If you kick them out, do they automatically become Republicans? Fucking great. And this suggestion was last week. This is what they were suggesting last week before this deal landed. And now that this deal has landed, I don't know why they would change their mind at all. It seems like they, still kick them out. What the fuck? Are you nuts? Down here on planet Earth, a lot of us are trying to move this ball forward every fucking day. And this idea that we could somehow, we'll show them, here's the plan for the midterms. Don't vote for Democrats so they know you mean business. Which, by the way, would guarantee that Democrats to get elected would have to court more center-right independents and bring them on board to make up for that gap. Brilliant strategy. And while you're at it, kick Manchin and Sinema out of the party, make them de facto Republicans, and hand the majority. Don't even wait for the midterms. Hand the majority over to Republicans. You know why? Because it looks like we might actually have the votes, the actual Senate this fall. Like Tim Ryan and Warnock's going to stay in. We may add 2 or 3 Democrats in the Senate. This might actually fucking happen. It wasn't going to happen earlier this year when these assholes were like, girl, he doesn't respect you. Biden needs to know you mean business. So you don't answer his phone call. You already did that once. You know, holler back, girl. Yeah, Fetterman, exactly. Just like, again, the TYT motto is, if we don't get everything, nobody gets anything. And that is not an attitude you can have if you actually give a fuck about working people, about the survivability of our of just people's health in general. If you can take one step forward to help somebody, you fucking well take it. And if the choice is between one step forward and no steps forward, you take that fucking step. And if you don't want to be leveraged to where you believe you could take 10 steps, if you only had the power to do so, then get the party that is taking that one step more reinforcements instead of less. Jesus. You do everything you can when you can do it. And then you get up tomorrow and figure out a way to do more. The idea that you just you cross your arms and go, what have you done for me lately, when you're ignoring the things that have been done, cutting the deficit in half, having unemployment, continuing UI into the spring, like getting people vaccinated. We're out of Afghanistan. That's $300 million a day we're not spending in fucking Afghanistan, not to mention the geopolitical implications or the human lives involved. The infrastructure bill, the American Rescue Package, this climate, the CHIPS bill. Like, all these things help people, give them good union jobs. That's the fucking point. It raises the standard of living of Americans. If you want America to be like a better force in the world, and you want us to be more magnanimous and more charitable, and we are the most charitable country in the world as individuals and governmentally, of any government, any society in the world, Americans give more than any other one. And if you want to keep that going, that requires people to thrive, do better than thrive. They have to better than survive. They have to thrive. Thriving people can give. Thriving people can be more magnanimous. They can be more supportive. They have extra left over to help people. And they do. They fucking well do. But this idea, like, this whole thing is just bullshit. I don't even buy any of it. It's dumb. And the CHIPS package, that was terrible. And infrastructure, who needs this shit? Like, I'll tell you who needs it. Poor people, single moms. You know who needs the infrastructure bill? Everybody who has lead pipes bringing water to their fucking house. That bill alone should shut these assholes up. The fucking nerve. We need a third and fourth party. Well, Webby, you can have one after we have broomed the Republicans. Once we grind the Republicans down to 20 members in the Senate and 100 people in the House, you got knock yourself the fuck out. But as long as they are the primary second, threat, I mean, shame on you if you think that that's an option. There are more elected Republicans in the Senate than there are Democrats elected. We have a 10-vote margin in the House. 10. It's over 500 people in the House. You're going to tell me that the most popular ideas in the world and progressive ideas, these are the things that are going to, that everybody wants? Well, then why do we have a 10-vote fucking margin? It's infantile. Right. It's a stupid juvenile cop-out. And, by the way, TYT makes their money bitching about the system. So if the system works, their business runs out of steam. One of the biggest problems that they've had, and their funding has gone down and they've lost a lot of steam over the last couple of years, is because, A, they've lost their more lunatic followers to Jimmy Dore, because those people, those are the straight up burn it all down crowd, which they're trying to lure back with this bullshit. But when things are going well, the ratings go down. Why the fuck do you think Rachel's been able to take off 4 nights of the week since the spring? I have to say, I'm increasingly disgusted by these folks. And this is why, like, their back and forth insults to me, I find amusing. But I find what's fascinating to me is how easily triggered they are. Because I name drop people in my tweets all the time. I reference them constantly. But whenever I do it with Cenk and Anna, boy, do they dig in. And I honestly think it's because they know. They know the last thing, they can't have somebody who's on to the business model, which is keep Democrats and Republicans in the voting world within a margin of error as best you can, so that you can skim off the anxiety money. It's like Russell Brand's bullshit meditation program. Freak everybody out, be a doomsayer, sell the end of the world, and then sell a meditation program to relax people, because apparently people have anxiety. This idea that you're going to rebuild the system between now and the fall when you haven't been able to so fucking far, and the organization that Cenk started kicked him out for being a pig. The idea that you're even tossing around the idea like we should get off we should get on green energy and get off fossil fuels tomorrow. Yeah, lovely. It does entail 1.6 billion people on the earth dying. Because in Latin America and in Africa and in India and large swaths of China, those people in those countries, you double the cost of oil and gas overnight like you're going to do with that kind of plan. Those diesel trucks, those gas guzzlers that run up into the hills, they just stop running. And in 3 months, everybody starves to death. That's why you're landing a plane, not a helicopter. God damn. Right. And yeah, well, Chris, and not to mention the fact that Democrats are the only ones interested in actual governing, and Republicans are literally want to burn the place down. If you don't vote this fall, you're voting for more Jan 6s. That's what's happening. And this idea that there's some magical pie in the sky, unicorn fart utopia, that you can excuse yourself from voting from for the Democrat that's in your area, that you can actually get elected, that will actually win because of that pie in the sky idea. It's not just childish and gross. It's irresponsible. And their lives on the line. Women's rights they shouldn't be a fucking ping pong ball. Do I like Kyle or Crystal Ball? I used to watch Crystal Ball. I think she was on The Hill. I don't watch their regular show. Kyle Kalinske, unfortunately, I find him to be easily confused about simple issues, especially economics, in what I've seen. I don't have a bone to pick with the dude because I don't watch it that often, but he was part of Justice Democrats, and they have sort of the same problem. Crystal Ball also shits on Democrats a bunch. I have that problem with it. And again, these are mostly tactical. TYT is actually built on it as a business model. Their job they effectively work for the Republican National Committee in that their entire business model is if the Democrats have a 7-point lead, you got to squeeze it. You got to do everything you can to get it within 3.5 so that they can lose, so the Republicans can catch up, so that you can bitch that the system needs to be torn apart or that Republicans are the monster and you could sell your organization is the one place to drop by and watch them shit on them. TYT is going to be very upset this fall when Democrats take more House seats and more Senate seats. Kyle didn't vote for Biden. He's an idiot. Well, Kyle is a child then. Because again, it's also about mandate. If you just withhold your vote, even if you're like, I'm going to vote third party or some shit, like what you're saying to the Republicans is that even though I say I'm for what Biden's trying to accomplish or the Democrats are trying to accomplish, I don't have their back. And I'm very easy to turn away from the voter booth. All you got to do is disenchant me a little bit and I'll tap out. So you don't really have to worry about me. These assholes spend so much time trying to put the fear of God in Democrats that they make Republicans happy every single day. The Republicans are not afraid of Kyle Kulinski or Anna Kasparian or Cenk Uygur. They don't worry about them at all. Doesn't bother them. That's my rant. I went over today because we started this clip and I felt bad cutting it short because it was 20 minutes long and I didn't want to get to the point where we were, like where I might have cut it off at one point and she'd have said something that contradicted the first 19 fucking minutes. Didn't happen. What we saw were, and this was the NBC News description of it. Then we saw him use, they had a bunch of pictures of Biden and Manchin and that kind of stuff, Schumer. And while they're saying he's definitely got businesses in New York, you know how they are. And then this article from Bloomberg that they cite with this one dude who hates it. Again, who I disagree with tactically, but I'm sure is a wonderful human being. But the options, the idea that there's another option is just goofy. Unless we have 62, which they are doing everything they can to stop. This asshole's entire job is making sure that Democrats never have a supermajority again. There you go. Does TYT push disinfo or misinfo? Well, I would argue I think they're misinformed a lot. But I also think most of their the diss comes from their opinions. It's that they shit on them. That's their real. I mean, I mean, at some point you got to be selling your genuine sour grapes about shit. It has to be. But I just recall what it was like when I met Anna at Politicon backstage. When she was laughing and yakking it up with everybody, and it wasn't until she found out that I was voting for Hillary that I suddenly became the enemy. Not somebody that tactically believed that she could get elected compared to somebody else and that she absolutely could, and as long as nobody participated in trying to subvert her during the campaign. But genuinely because I thought we were ready for a woman president. I thought she was immensely qualified and she's a good human being, which you don't have to agree with me on. But there's a distinct difference between me and somebody who was like voting for Trump or somebody who wanted fucking Santorum to win. And her reaction to me voting for Hillary, I would have been better off saying I was for Santorum, which tells you what the problem is. Anyways, I adore you guys. I have radio tomorrow. We're trying the new system tomorrow. Fingers crossed. Oh, God. I hope it works. Wish me luck for having Philip and Johnny Million on the radio tomorrow. I've got to make a new screen and put it up for tonight. And hopefully, it'll work fine. I got to get up like an hour and a half early to try and get everybody online and get everything sent out. So we'll see. So I'm going to try to get to bed earlier tonight, but there's never an end to the amount of news I end up watching. So anyways, I appreciate you guys. Thank you very much. Remember, vote.org. Make sure you're registered. Make sure you vote and vote for somebody who will actually get elected, who best reflects your values out of the two genuine possibilities we currently have. And if you have a dream of a third party, like I said, as soon as we marginalize the Republicans down to 20 seats or less in the Senate, knock yourself the fuck out. I'll back you all the way. But until that point, it is not safe. These people are too big a danger, and I'm not going to allow them to borrow my car with my kid in the back seat, with the kind of standards in the Republican Party right now. And if you're willing to do that, then you're a maniac. Take care of yourself and take care of somebody else. And also, don't forget to like and subscribe, give a thumbs up, support the show. And if you hate the show, and if you're very mad at me for what I've said about TYT, welcome. Glad you're here. Continue watching. I think you might come around to my way of thinking, and you'll understand that our differences are largely tactical. We might have some policy differences, but mostly they'll be tactical because I actually want to accomplish the things we all talk about accomplishing, not piss away every chance making the perfect the enemy of the good. I'm not willing to do that anymore, and I'm not willing to even entertain the ridiculous idea. And until then, take care of yourself and take care of somebody else. And remember, if you're ever confronted with a choice that you believe is the lesser of two evils, choose less evil. See you tomorrow.